My boyfriend faked his death, then made it look like I stole from him. I cut him off, thought it was over. 2 years later, he was outside my college dorm, just standing there, watching me. The day it started, I was in math class, casually texting my friends the road work ahead meme when the intercom crackled. Our principal cleared his throat, a sound we all recognized as the start of some announcement. Attention students and staff, remain in your classrooms. Do not leave your seats until further notice. This is for everyone's safety. Suddenly, the usual classroom chatter vanished. Even Mrs. Peterson froze mid-sentence. Outside, we heard sirens, flashing lights reflecting off the windows. Someone screamed in the next hallway. Mrs. Peterson told us to stay calm, but she was clearly panicking. Her breathing was fast and shallow. She couldn't even stop us from pulling out our phones. Snapchat lit up instantly with theories. Some said a teacher had collapsed. Others guessed there was an accident. Someone joked maybe Mr. Jordan, the weird history teacher, finally lost it. Another guessed an allergy attack. No one really knew, but the tension was real. Then we heard footsteps, heavy, fast. I had to look. I slid quietly to the door and peeked through the window. 2 paramedics were sprinting past with a stretcher, like something out of a hospital drama. Get away from the door, Eve, Mrs. Peterson said, her voice trembling. I sat back down and immediately messaged everyone what I'd seen. A minute later, the classroom door opened. It was the principal, standing next to a police officer. Eve O'Brien, can you come with us? Please bring your things. My stomach dropped. What was happening? In the hallway, I saw the stretcher again. One paramedic sat on the floor, filling out paperwork. The other stood near the gym. They led me to the office. And there they were, my parents, together, in the same room. That hadn't happened since I was 7. My mom stood up and hugged me tight, whispering, "I'm so sorry," over and over. I was confused. Guys, it's okay. I mean, if it was a teacher, that's awful, but I didn't finish. My dad, usually stoic and unreadable, broke down, full tears. Honey, it wasn't a teacher. Then they told me. They said Alvin, my boyfriend, had died. I stepped back. What kind of sick joke is that? I literally saw him last night. My mom looked like she was about to collapse. My dad finally spoke. His dad called him down for breakfast this morning. When he didn't answer, they went to his room. It was empty. Then they checked the attic. The door wouldn't open because his body... He couldn't finish. I pulled out my phone, didn't even care that the principal was watching. I told them they were lying. I told them I saw the paramedics. I heard the screams. They explained I was about to be called to the office when the janitor slipped and broke his hip. That had taken priority. I looked back at my mom. She was shaking uncontrollably. I bit down on my hoodie sleeve and screamed into it until I couldn't breathe. I dropped to the floor, hitting my head just to feel something real. Anything. My parents had to carry me to the car. We were halfway home when I got the text. It was from Alvin. His contact photo lit up my screen. A beach selfie from last summer. The message? A YouTube link. The rain tapped softly against the window as I sat frozen, staring at my screen. My parents didn't notice, too wrapped in their own silence. I clicked the link, hands trembling. The video loaded slowly, buffering for what felt like forever. And then, there he was. Alvin. Alive. He looked like a different person, battered, scared, sitting in what looked like an old cabin with wood-paneled walls. His face was bruised, lips split, dried blood at the corner of his mouth. His left eye was nearly swollen shut. His voice, when he started speaking, was raw, like he'd been crying for hours. He said he was sorry, said he never wanted to scare me. But he had to get away. He claimed his dad had been hurting him for years. And the night before, he vanished. It was worse than ever. Then he lifted his shirt. I gasped. His ribs were covered in deep, dark bruises. Purple, yellow, some new, some fading. His arms were the same, marked with red and green splotches, and scars I'd never seen before, hidden under those long sleeves he always wore. My heart was breaking. He explained that after he ran, his dad found the empty room and called for help, pretending Alvin had harmed himself, to cover up the years of abuse. Alvin said he'd been planning this for months, saving every dollar from his part-time job. A friend helped him find the cabin. The video ended with him looking directly into the camera, eyes filled with tears. "I love you, Eve," he said. "I'm sorry." Then, black screen. I just sat there, stunned. My boyfriend was alive, but he let the world think he was gone. My mom turned around and caught a glimpse of my phone. Her expression changed in an instant. Alert. Worried. She snatched the phone from my hands before I could react. I tried to tell her about the video, the cabin, the truth, but she cut me off, said it was probably some cruel prank by kids from school, that people could be heartless during times like this, that I was in shock and needed to accept reality. My dad just nodded along, giving me that same pitying look in the mirror. They brought me home and my mom kept the phone, said I needed a break from distractions. I lay in bed, eyes closed, pretending to sleep, but my mind was racing. I had to see that message again. I had to know if this was real, or if I was just unraveling. Later that night, when the house went still, I waited. I crept downstairs, dodging the creaky third step, and found my phone on the kitchen counter, charging. There was a new message from Alvin. He sent an address, a cabin near the edge of the state forest. He told me to come alone, that he'd explain everything once I got there. My brain screamed this was reckless, but my heart couldn't stay away. I snuck out through my bedroom window, the cool night air biting my skin. I grabbed my bike, rolled it past the garden tools, and pedaled into the night. The roads were dark, empty. Shadows stretched under the streetlights like ghosts. Every few feet I thought I saw something move, but I kept going. The memory of Alvin's face pushing me forward, his bruises, his voice, his fear. The ride felt endless. My legs were on fire. I stopped twice to catch my breath, lungs aching in the cold. The forest road was even worse, pitch black, with only my phone flashlight to guide me. The beam barely cut through the darkness, just enough to see the cracked asphalt and shifting trees. And then, I saw it. The cabin. A faint light glowing from a single window. I left my bike by an old oak tree and walked up slowly. The leaves crunched under my sneakers. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door creaked open. Alvin stood there. He looked even worse than before. The bruises had deepened, spreading across his face. His right eye was nearly shut. He pulled me in fast and locked the door behind us, sliding the deadbolt with trembling hands. I wanted to hug him, but something felt off. He was jittery, kept glancing out the window, pulling the curtain back like he was expecting someone to burst in. The cabin was tiny, damp, with a musty smell. Fear clung to the walls. There was a sleeping bag in one corner, a few canned goods on a shaky table. He told me to sit and started speaking quickly. Too quickly, like he was racing against time. His words came out fast, tripping over each other. He said it started when he was a kid. First just slaps when his grades dropped, then full-on punches if he talked back. The night he disappeared, his dad shoved him down the stairs. All because he forgot to take out the trash. That's when Alvin said he hit his breaking point. I asked the obvious question. Why didn't he tell anyone? He laughed, but not in a way that felt okay. It was hollow, bitter. He told me his dad was respected, coached Little League, shook hands with everyone at church. No one would believe a word against him. And if Alvin ever told anyone, his dad always threatened to make things worse. Then Alvin lifted his shirt again. There were more bruises, on his back, on his legs, thin, angry lines that looked like belt marks, circular ones that were clearly from fists. My stomach turned. All those times he wore long sleeves in the middle of summer, claiming he was cold. All those excuses, falling off his skateboard, walking into a door. The truth had been right in front of me the whole time. Then, he dropped a bomb. He confessed he'd been taking small amounts of money from the register at his dad's hardware store. Just a little here and there, enough to slowly build an escape fund. But here's where it got really messed up. He'd used my name on fake receipts, said I'd been helping out after school, supposedly getting paid under the table. I stood up immediately. You what? He said it was the only way to protect himself. If his dad ever caught on, he'd blame it on me. And maybe, just maybe, his dad would go easier on him. Yell instead of hitting. I was speechless. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm, not forcefully, but enough to stop me. His grip wasn't violent, but it was desperate. I need you to hear the rest, he said. According to him, this whole thing was just the beginning. He planned to hide out for a few more days until his bruises looked worse on camera. Then he'd go to the police, use the receipts as leverage, say his dad forced him to take the money, threaten to expose the truth if his father denied the abuse. It was twisted logic, but in his mind, it all made sense. I told him this wasn't okay. He had used me without my knowledge. That's not what trust looks like. He started crying again, tears mixing with dried blood on his cheek. "I didn't know what else to do," he said. "I'm sorry. You're the only person I trust." I took a step toward the door, until I saw it. Both tires on my bike, flat. My voice stayed calm, but my hands started to shake. "What happened to my bike?" He shrugged. "You probably hit some glass or something on the road." But he wouldn't look me in the eye. I asked to use his phone. He said he didn't have it anymore, threw it in the river so his dad couldn't track him. Of course. Now I was stuck, in the middle of nowhere. No ride, no phone, no way out. He kept saying I just needed to stay a little longer, just until he figured things out. He promised to fix my bike in the morning. But the way he was talking, the way he kept switching between apologies and control, between guilt and commands, it reminded me of something. It reminded me of the way he described his dad. So I changed tactics. I nodded slowly, told him I understood, sat back down on that creaky wooden chair. I asked him to explain the plan again, said I wanted to help. While he talked, I scanned the room for anything that could help me. There was an old landline phone on the wall. "Does that still work?" I asked casually. "No," he said quickly. "Disconnected years ago." Of course it was. He pulled out a notebook. Page after page, he'd recorded every instance of what his dad had done to him. Dates, descriptions. June 3rd, belt, 10 hits. July 19th, punch to the stomach, couldn't breathe. It went on and on. Then he showed me the fake receipts, with my name, my signature, forged almost perfectly. That night, I slept on the floor in a thin sleeping bag. Alvin sat upright in a chair by the door, like he was guarding something, or guarding me. In the morning, I told him I needed to use the bathroom. He pointed to an outhouse out back and followed me. I could see his shadow through the wood slats while I was inside. He was humming nervously. On the way back, I saw a faint trail, a path leading deeper into the woods. I counted the trees, memorized where it started. Back in the cabin, I kept pretending. I said I wanted to help, said I believed in him, said he deserved justice. He lit up, hugged me so tight it made my skin crawl. And that's when it hit me. Maybe this was the real Alvin, or maybe the version I thought I knew never existed at all. He started telling me more details about how his dad would make him stand in the corner. He said his dad used to make him stand in the corner for hours, until his legs gave out. Sometimes he'd take away food, not just for a meal, for days. And when that wasn't enough, he'd lock him in the basement. No lights, just the sound of mice scratching inside the walls. Every story he told was worse than the last. I believed him. The bruises were real. The fear in his voice was real. But that didn't mean what he was doing to me was okay. He was so lost in his own trauma that he couldn't see he was pulling me down with him. When he stepped out to use the outhouse, I searched through his stuff as fast as I could. That's when I found it. His journal. Page after page, it was all there. The abuse, the injuries, the pain. But also the plan. A plan that involved me. Dates, forged receipts, ideas on how to get me there, how to make me stay. He'd been writing it all down like some kind of script. Then I found something else, buried beneath a pile of dirty clothes. His phone. He didn't throw it in a river like he claimed. He had it the whole time. The battery was just removed. My hands were shaking as I slid the battery back in and powered it up. Messages loaded instantly, dozens of them, all from his dad. But they weren't messages from a panicked parent. They were threats, violent, cold, promising to find Alvin, promising consequences. The last one made my skin go cold. It said his father knew about the money, knew about the fake receipts, knew about me, and he was coming. I shoved the phone back where I found it just as Alvin returned. My pulse was pounding in my ears. That afternoon, Alvin grew more jumpy. He kept peeking out the windows, flinching at every noise. A cracking branch, a bird call. He said his dad might know where the cabin was, that they'd visited once during a family gathering. I suggested we go to the police now, before it was too late, but Alvin refused. He said he wasn't ready. He needed the story to be airtight. He needed the bruises to set in more. I realized he was stalling, terrified to face his dad, even through the legal system. The years of fear had done something to him. He wasn't thinking clearly. I told him I was hungry. Truth was, all we had left was a few stale crackers and a dusty can of beans. I suggested I ride out to the nearest store for supplies. He laughed, reminded me of my flat tires. Then he said he'd go. that I should stay inside. Lock the door, he said. Don't open it for anyone. The second he left, I grabbed his phone and called 911, but the battery died. 3 beeps, and then nothing. I tore through the cabin looking for a charger. Nothing. Then I remembered the path in the woods. I had to try. I took off on foot, fast but quiet. Branches scratched at my arms, leaves tangled in my hair, spiderwebs clung to my face. After 10 minutes of running, I heard it. A car engine. Relief turned to dread. It was Alvin's dad. His black pickup, crawling down a dirt road. He was scanning the trees, looking, hunting. I dropped to the ground, hiding behind a tree, barely breathing. He passed by without seeing me. As soon as the sound of his engine faded, I headed the opposite direction. About 20 minutes later, I heard another car. I ducked again. This time, it was Alvin, driving a rusted-out truck I didn't recognize. He looked panicked, wild, gripping the wheels so tight his knuckles were white. I waited until he disappeared around a bend, then kept moving, heart pounding, every nerve on edge. Eventually, I saw it. A house. Small, but real. Smoke curled from the chimney. Flowers in the windows. Hope. I ran to the door and knocked hard, praying someone was home. An elderly woman opened it, wearing a floral apron. She looked startled, probably because I looked like I'd been through a storm. Scratched up, breathless, desperate. I begged her for a phone, said it was an emergency. She studied my face, nodded, and let me in. Her kitchen smelled like fresh bread. She pointed to a rotary phone on the wall, like something out of a museum. I grabbed it with both hands and called my mom. She picked up on the first ring, crying. She told me they'd been looking for me all night. The police were involved. Everyone thought I'd run away. Or worse. All because of Alvin. I told her I was safe for now. The woman helped me figure out the address from mail on her counter. My mom said they were on their way. Immediately. Then I called the police. I told them everything. Where Alvin was. That he was alive. That he needed help. But also, that he had me trapped. That I'd escaped. While I waited, the woman made me tea. Chamomile. With honey. She said kids like me sometimes pass through. She never asked questions, just tried to help. She gave me cookies, a clean washcloth for my scratches. And then I heard it. Cars pulling up. Multiple engines. My parents burst through the front door, faces pale, eyes wide. The door burst open, and my mom pulled me into the tightest hug of my life. I could barely breathe. She was crying so hard she couldn't speak. And my dad just kept saying my name over and over like he was trying to convince himself I was really there. 2 officers had come with them. They asked me question after question, trying to piece it all together. I told them everything. About the video, the cabin, the bruises, the forged receipts. One of them stayed with us while the other went to track down the cabin. We waited for what felt like hours. The old woman made more tea. My mom didn't let go of my hand once. Finally, the officer's radio buzzed to life. They'd found the cabin. Alvin wasn't there, but his journal was. And the fake receipts. Evidence of both what had been done to him and what he'd planned to do to me. A countywide alert went out, for both Alvin and his dad. I had to go to the station to give a full statement. My parents drove me, their hands in mine the entire way. It felt like I'd been gone for years, even though it had only been one terrifying night. At the station, I told my story again, this time to a detective. He recorded everything. While I was still there, they got a call. A traffic camera had picked up the rusted-out truck Alvin was driving. He was headed back into town. They sent officers to intercept him, and about an hour later, they brought him in. He looked different, hollow, like all the energy had drained out of him. He didn't resist, just stared at the ground. When he passed by the interview room window, he looked up and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I didn't know how to feel. Angry, hurt, relieved. Maybe all of it. The detective told me they'd also picked up Alvin's dad. He'd been found at home, intoxicated and violent. He tried to fight the officers when they showed up. Now, both of them were in custody. In the days that followed, the truth started spilling out. Other students admitted they'd seen Alvin show up at school with bruises. Teachers said they'd noticed things but never had enough to act. The store's records confirmed missing money. The receipts were clearly forged. His journal was heartbreaking, page after page of abuse. But it also showed how the abuse had warped him, taught him to manipulate, to control. How he'd learned to survive by turning into something he hated. The prosecutor decided to press charges. Alvin's dad would face child abuse and filing a false report. Alvin, for fraud, forgery and holding me at that cabin against my will. But they also considered the years of trauma, the damage he'd endured. They said Alvin would likely get counseling, community service, not jail. His dad, though? He was looking at serious time. It turned out this wasn't his first incident. When the court date came, both of them took plea deals, so there was no full trial. Just a hearing. Seeing Alvin there was hard. He looked smaller, fragile. His lawyer read a statement where Alvin apologized, especially to me. He said he was learning how trauma can twist a person's sense of right and wrong, that he never meant to hurt me but didn't know what else to do, that he was getting help now. His dad didn't say a word, just glared at everyone like we were the problem. After everything, I started therapy too. I needed help sorting through the mess, and it helped. My therapist taught me something that changed the way I saw it all. Trauma explains behavior. It doesn't excuse it. Yes, Alvin was a victim, but he made me one too. And both those things can be true at the same time. She helped me recognize red flags I'd missed. The way he tried to control me, how he isolated me, how he made everything about his pain until there was no space for mine. I started a support group at school for anyone dealing with toxic relationships, family, dating, friendships. We met in the guidance counselor's office, and to my surprise, it filled up fast. Turns out a lot of people were going through stuff they didn't know how to talk about. We shared stories. We learned what healthy boundaries looked like, how to speak up, how to tell when something isn't okay, even if the other person seems broken. One day a letter arrived. It was from Alvin. I didn't open it right away. Weeks passed. When I finally did, it was full of apologies. He wrote about everything he was learning, about cycles of harm, about how people who never get help sometimes become exactly what hurt them. He said he was determined to break that pattern. He thanked me for speaking up, said it might have saved his life. Maybe others too. I didn't write back. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never will be. His dad got 5 years. The judge said he showed no remorse and remained a danger. When he gets out, he'll have to stay away from Alvin completely. Alvin got probation, 2 years, plus mandatory therapy. He had to pay back every dollar. Last I heard, he was living with his uncle out of state, working at a grocery store, taking online classes, trying to rebuild. I learned something through all this. Yes, hurt people, but everyone has a choice. Alvin made his. He could have asked for help. Instead, he lied, forged my name, trapped me in his escape. I forgave him, but not for him. For me. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting someone back into your life. It just means letting go of the anger, so it doesn't poison you too. I still have nightmares sometimes, of that cabin, of the feeling that I'd never get out. But then I wake up, and I remember I did. And now, I help others find their way out too. I remember that I got out. I found a way. And now, I help others find theirs too. The support group kept growing. Eventually, the school board gave us funding to bring in real speakers, experts on emotional abuse, survivors who'd turned their pain into power. We were making a difference. One conversation, one story, one kid at a time. But looking back, the scariest part of it all wasn't the cabin. It wasn't the fake receipts, or even being trapped. It was how normal Alvin had seemed. How well he'd hidden not just his trauma, but his intentions. That's what haunted me. It made me realize something important. You never really know what someone else is going through. You don't know what choices they're making in silence, in desperation. And that's why it matters so much to trust your instincts, to listen when something doesn't feel right, to ask for help even when it's uncomfortable. Because staying quiet, it helps no one. Not the person being hurt, not the person doing the hurting, and definitely not the people who get caught in between. That's why I'm telling this story. Not for sympathy, not for views, but because someone out there might be in a situation like mine. Maybe you're being manipulated by someone who's hurting, or maybe you are the one trying to fix someone else's pain. Either way, hear this. It's not your job to fix another person's trauma. You can care about them. You can feel for what they've been through. But that doesn't mean sacrificing your safety. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And sometimes, survival is the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved. Then things took a strange turn again. We'd gotten some local press, a small article in the town paper about our group. Nothing big, just Teens supporting teens. But soon after, I got a Facebook message from someone named Cameron. They said they knew Alvin from the facility, claimed he wasn't doing as well as everyone thought, that he'd just gotten better at hiding it. At first, I wasn't sure what to think. Could have been drama, could have been real. My counselor told me to stay cautious. But then, more messages came. Cameron said Alvin had been talking about me in group therapy. A lot. Not in a healing way. In an obsessive one. Blaming me for everything. Calling me the reason his life fell apart. I took screenshots. Showed the detective who worked our case. He said they'd look into it. But without a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. Talking about someone in therapy, even obsessively, wasn't against the law. Then, one afternoon, I saw it. That truck. The same rusted-out one Alvin drove in the woods. It was parked outside my house. I ducked behind a hedge and called my mom. "Don't come outside." Then I dialed 911. By the time the officers arrived, the truck was empty. They ran the plates. It was registered to someone named Dennis, 2 towns over. They paid him a visit. He said he sold the truck. Cash deal. No paperwork. To a kid who matched Alvin's description. Fake name, no trail. The police said they'd increase patrols. My parents installed cameras around the house. My dad stayed home the next day just in case. Nothing happened. For a few days, I started to let my guard down. Then Thursday came. After school, I was waiting for my mom when I saw him. Alvin, across the street, baseball cap, sunglasses, like that could hide him. He was just standing there, watching the doors. I ran back into the building and grabbed the security guard. By the time we got outside, he was gone. But the footage caught him. Clear as day. He'd been standing there for nearly an hour. It was a direct violation of his probation. He wasn't allowed near me. Or the school. A warrant went out. They checked with his probation officer. Alvin hadn't shown up in weeks. No therapy. No check-ins. He'd left his uncle's place in the middle of the night and disappeared. We didn't know where he was staying. My parents wanted to pull me out of school, but I had finals. And the group needed me. We compromised. They drove me to and from campus. No walking alone. No spontaneous hangouts. I had to text every hour. It was exhausting. But I understood. The cameras at home caught someone in our yard twice that week. Too dark to see clearly. But the outline, the posture, it looked familiar. Then something even more disturbing happened. Brittany, one of the girls from the support group, came to me shaking. She said a new user had joined the online trauma forum they were in, called himself Survivor No More. His story? Almost exactly Alvin's. Abusive dad, runaway girlfriend. But in his version, the girlfriend was the villain. The one who ruined his life. The one who betrayed him. People were buying into it, offering support. Some even said they'd help him make things right. Brittany had screenshots. She blocked him. Brought it all to me. I went straight back to the detective. This wasn't just about broken rules anymore. This was stalking, escalation, and Alvin had learned exactly how to make people feel unsafe, without crossing any obvious lines, just like his father had. Until now, showing up at school, that was the line. My counselor once suggested I write him a letter, not to send, just to get the weight out of my system. So I did. 10 pages. I wrote about how he took the pain he'd carried for years and turned it into mine. How I loved him. How I tried to help him. And how he made it impossible. Then I burned it in the backyard fire pit and watched the smoke curl into the sky like it was finally leaving me. My mom brought hot chocolate. We sat in silence while the fire died out. I thought it was over. But the following Monday, Cameron messaged me again with a photo taken inside the treatment center. It showed Alvin's room, covered in maps. Red circles marked places I went regularly. My school, the coffee shop I studied in, the park where I jogged, even the movie theater where I worked weekends. He'd been tracking me, planning. Cameron said the staff found it after Alvin vanished, but by then, it was too late. The facility hadn't kept a close enough watch. They'd dropped the ball. That's when my parents made the call. We were leaving. We packed that night and stayed with my aunt in the next state. I didn't want to run, but those maps, they weren't just scary. They were personal, obsessive, targeted. We told the school it was a family emergency. Only a few close friends knew the truth. The support group would have to run without me for a while. My aunt's neighborhood was locked down tight. Gates, guards, cameras on every corner. It felt extreme, but also strangely safe. I did school online, Video called into group meetings. Life felt familiar and wrong. Like I was in hiding. Like I wasn't really living. Every slow-moving car, every stranger's glance sent my heart racing. I hated that he'd made me feel like this. Then, 2 weeks later, we got the call. They'd found him. He was sleeping in his truck, in a parking garage, one town over. Inside the truck, police found a notebook full of my routines and hundreds of photos he'd taken with a long-lens camera. Me walking to class, working, jogging, even one from outside my bedroom window. There was also rope, a knife. He claimed it was for camping. No one believed that. He was held without bail. We came home the next day, but everything felt different. I couldn't stop checking windows or locks. My parents understood. My dad installed a full security system. My mom signed me up for self-defense. I went through every class like I was training for something serious. The instructor said I was a natural. Maybe because I had something to fight for. The new charges were serious. Stalking, breaking probation, possession. His attorney tried to use the same defense as before. Childhood trauma. But the judge wasn't having it. He'd been given a second chance, and he destroyed it. The photos creeped everyone out the most. Some had been taken long before he ever disappeared. He'd been watching me for months. The detective told me it was one of the most disturbing stalking cases he'd ever worked. This time, I didn't appear in court. I submitted a written statement. The prosecutor read it for me. I wrote about how I no longer felt safe, about how I had to leave my home, how his obsession changed the way I lived, breathed, trusted. But I also wrote about the support group, about how we were healing, together, about how I refused to let his choices define my life. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in prison, real prison, with mandatory treatment, a permanent restraining order. A few weeks later, I got a letter from his father. Not an apology exactly, but something close. He said he'd started therapy too, court-ordered, but still. He said he finally realized how his own actions had bled into his sons, how the violence passed down like a curse. He hoped I'd find peace, that I'd have a life untouched by their family's damage. I didn't write back, but I kept the letter, just to remind myself, even people who cause harm can learn. Maybe. The support group threw me a welcome back party when I returned. Banner and everything. We'd grown, doubled even. So many students had come forward, realizing they needed help too. Some were living with abuse, some in controlling relationships, some silently drowning in trauma. We all had different stories, but the same truth. We wanted to be heard, to be seen, to feel like we weren't crazy or alone. I graduated high school with decent grades, all things considered. Got into a state college about 3 hours away, close enough to visit home, but far enough to breathe again. When I moved into the dorms, my dad triple-checked the locks. My mom made friends with campus security. I rolled my eyes, but I was grateful. They'd been through this too. Watching someone you'd trusted turn into a threat and nearly take your child with them, that's its own kind of trauma. College gave me a chance to start fresh. Nobody knew my story unless I chose to share it. I wasn't the girl from the cabin. I was just Eve. I studied psychology because I wanted to understand people better, because I wanted to help someone else before the damage starts, and because I'd learned something that changed me forever. Pain doesn't give you permission to hurt others. Everyone has a choice, and I chose to survive. I kept studying psychology because understanding why people do what they do felt more important than ever. My professor once told me I had a natural instinct for this work. Lived experience, she said with a knowing smile. I didn't tell her she was right. I started a new support group on campus, and just like in high school, the need was there. So many students had stories like mine, or close enough. Pain doesn't stop just because you grow up. Then, junior year, I got a notification that made my whole body freeze. Alvin was being released early. Good behavior. 2 years instead of 3. The restraining order was still active, but paper can't stop someone determined to cross a line. I called the detective from my case. He was retired now, but he remembered. Told me to trust my gut, to stay alert. The system was supposed to tell me when Alvin walked out those doors, but the detective warned, sometimes those systems fail. For weeks, I lived in hyper-awareness. Every unfamiliar face on campus, every random number on my phone. Instant panic. My roommate Julia thought I was being paranoid, until I told her everything. Then she became my shadow, walked me to class, Checked in constantly. It was annoying, but it helped. It felt like backup. Campus security had his photo. Patrols increased. I still didn't feel safe. Then one day, I got an email, no subject line, just, please read. It was from Alvin's uncle. He said Alvin had been released, but had immediately checked himself into a long-term psychiatric facility, voluntarily. He signed papers to stay for 5 years, said he finally realized he needed real help, serious help, ongoing. I wanted to believe it, but trust doesn't come easy anymore. I forwarded the message to the detective. He checked it out. It was real. Alvin had walked out of prison and straight into treatment. This time, not because he was forced to, but because he chose to. He told the intake staff he was afraid of what he might do if left alone. That was new. Maybe therapy had started working, or maybe he just got tired of hurting people. Either way, the fear began to fade, slowly. I finished college with honors, got into grad school for clinical psychology, specializing in trauma recovery. My advisor told me to be careful, said my experience gave me insight, but I had to make space for my own healing too. She was right. I met a guy, Noah, in a research methods class. Told him my story on our 3rd date. He didn't run. The campus support group I'd started became an official program, with a real office and real funding. I trained students to run it after I left. Watching it grow beyond me, that felt like real healing. At the end-of-year ceremony, they gave me a plaque, Founder, Guardian Angel. It was cheesy. I cried anyway. My parents were there, proud, emotional. They'd come so far too. From terrified parents in a school office to silent pillars behind a girl building something out of the wreckage. I earned my doctorate and started working with at-risk youth, kids who'd been hurt or were beginning to hurt others. I saw the same fire in some of their eyes, the pain, the anger, the confusion. I saw Alvin. Some days were hard, but most days were good. Then, 5 years after Alvin entered the facility, I got another message from his uncle. He was still in treatment, now part of a transitional program, working as a maintenance assistant, taking college classes online, stable, getting better, really better. I was glad to hear it, but I didn't reply. That was his journey now. Mine had taken a different path, and that was okay. Sometimes kids in the support groups I speak at ask me, "Did you ever forgive him?" It's complicated. I forgave the broken kid who never learned right from wrong, but I couldn't forget the one who used everything he knew about me to build a trap. Both of them were real. Both of them lived in the same person. That's what trauma does. It splits people, fractures them, turns victims into threats. And healing takes work. Constant, daily work. I married Noah last spring. Quiet ceremony. Just a few people who knew the whole story. I still run groups. Still teach kids that their pain doesn't have to become their identity. That their future can be different. Yes, I still check the locks more often than most people. But I'm not afraid anymore. Alvin is just a name in an old story now. Except when I'm sitting across from a kid who reminds me of him, then it all comes back. And that's not a bad thing. It keeps me focused. It keeps me fighting. Because now I know one person reaching out at the right moment can change everything. Last I heard, Alvin was in a halfway house, still in therapy, still healing. His dad? Back in prison. Some people change, some don't. But every day we get to choose who we are. That's the real story. Not what happens in the worst moment of your life, but what you do after. Because surviving, that's just the beginning. Choosing something better every day after. That's what real strength looks like.